We've heard stories of people retiring at a very early age, in some cases as early as 30 or perhaps 40. Is that really realistic? How do they actually do it? Sure, they may not win the lottery, but don't most of them make well above six figures? My name is Rob Berger. I'm the founder of doughroller.net and the host of this podcast. Today we're going to speak with Chris from the blog Eat the Financial Elephant. He's going to tell us how he and his wife are on track to retire in just 2 years at the ripe old age of 40.
Welcome to the Dough Roller Podcast, where the best thing money can buy is financial freedom. We help you make more, spend less, and invest the rest. And now your host, Rob Berger.
Whether you're just starting out, buried under a mountain of debt, or well on your way to financial freedom, this is the podcast to help you take your finances to the next level. Today, I've got a special interview for you. We're going to be talking with Chris, who is the founder of the personal finance blog, Eat the Financial Elephant. What a great name. He and his wife are on track to retire in just a couple of years. He's 38. He's on track to retire at age 40. Now, as you'll hear, they didn't win the lottery. They didn't get, they didn't create Facebook. They didn't take a company public and get millions in stock options. They made I guess you'd call it a middle-class income, and they were very, very smart with it. One of the things that I like, though, about this interview is you'll hear is that they made plenty of mistakes. And as Chris will readily admit, they made plenty of mistakes, in at least some cases, unfortunately, on the advice of a financial planner. But they got the big things right. And when you get the big things right, like saving money and investing it smartly, when you get the big things right, you can recover from those smaller mistakes. Even if they're significant, you can recover from them, as Chris and his wife have on their way to retiring at age 40. As I said, Chris is the founder of EatTheFinancialElephant.com, a personal finance blog that shares with his readers his journey to early retirement. He's also a physical therapist, lives in Pennsylvania, and I think most importantly is a diehard Steelers fan. Chris, welcome to the show.
Hi, Rob. I'm excited to talk to you.
Well, I appreciate your time today. So we're going to kind of talk about a number of things, your financial journey, your blogging at Eat the Financial Elephant. So just to kind of jump right into it, why don't you tell us a little bit about yourself, who you are, your family, what you do?
Yeah, sure. My name's Chris, and my wife and I, we started our blog. We're talking about our journey to early retirement. I'm 38 and she's 37. And our goal is around I guess our goal would be when I'm 40 to be able to cut back to at least part-time work or just completely retire if that's what we choose to do. And we haven't kind of finalized our plans yet, but that's where we're at. And we also have a 2-year-old daughter.
So you said you're 38.
Correct.
And so you're looking to retire or go part-time in 2 years.
Yeah, I mean, when I say part-time, it would be probably pretty casual. Yeah, I'm basically looking to early retire.
Okay. So that raises a whole host of questions for me, Chris. So let's start with, when did you first decide that early retirement was something you wanted to aim for?
Honestly, I never knew really that this even was possible or how you would go about doing it. But just kind of intuitively, my wife and I, we both come from, I'd say, middle class to lower middle class backgrounds. And so as we started working, within a few years of working, I had a conversation with my dad, and he kind of revealed that the money that I was making alone was as much as he and my mother had made in their best years. And they had done fairly well for themselves. So we just kind of figured, if we can we were making about the same, my wife and I. So we kind of figured if we could make more than that, then why couldn't we just save half of it and, see what happened? And that was kind of our thought, is just see how short of a career we can have and how much time we can just enjoy.
And you're a physical therapist?
Correct.
Okay. So is that what you did? You started saving half of your total income?
We kind of got into, we never really had a plan. So that was never our intention per se. What we did, my wife, she started working 1 year before when I was still in graduate school. And so she was basically supporting us. And so as soon as I got out of school, like she had a small student loan and a small car loan. And we were just like, we're living fine. We were getting by on her salary. It was, I think she started about $36,000. So we weren't making a lot of money, but we were doing okay. And so I figured if we could just use my money as I started to actually have a real paycheck, a real career, and we could pay off her debts. So that's what we did. And then it worked fine and we were happy. So we just kind of kept doing that. And we would use my money to either invest, save, put towards housing. So yeah, we never really spent ever my salary as long as I've been working.
Wow. Okay. So now, all right. So you were living off her salary. You graduated. You started making money, and rather than spend the money or to upgrade your lifestyle, you just took your income, paid off some debt that you had, and then started investing it.
Correct.
And how long ago was that?
I got my my master's degree in 2001. So that's when my career started, like May of 2001.
So 14 years ago. And you've basically done that. You've really saved your income for 14 years.
Yeah, more or less. And again, like, I think people consider, like, when you say 50%, like extreme frugality, and they look at it as sacrificing. And I guess we've never really looked at it as such because we've been happy all along. And again, we've never made huge money, but we made enough that we were very happy. And so, like, along the way, like we've traveled extensively, and so occasionally, I mean, I'm sure there's been years where we were maybe at 40% because we've spent some of my money if we splurge, and there's probably years where we saved maybe 60, or I would say now we're probably closer to 70% savings rate, just because we're paying more attention to it. But yeah, there was never really a big plan, and there was never like we're going to spend exactly 50% and save exactly 50. It's never really been like that.
Right. And so I'm curious, what kind of places? Where would you travel to? Any exciting places?
We've been all over the world. We've probably our most unique places. I mean, we've been to Africa. We've climbed Mount Kilimanjaro, been on safari. We're into mountaineering. We've been to Ecuador, all over the States. We've been to Australia. So yeah, I mean, basically whatever we kind of wanted to do, we've always done. I'm a big football fan. We've been to the Super Bowl. Yeah, so kind of whatever.
Wow. So which Super Bowl did you go to?
I'm a Steelers fan, so
yeah, baby.
We went to the one in Detroit, Super Bowl 40. And, that was just kind of something I always said I was going to do. When I was in college, I went to the University of Pittsburgh, and when I was in college, I worked at Domino's Pizza, and the Steelers made the Super Bowl, and they made me work that day. And I always said if they made it back, I was going. And so when they went, it was in Detroit, and I have some family there. It was drivable, so we just decided we're going to do it, and actually scalp tickets in the bathroom of a bar. And yeah, it was an interesting day.
So, who did they play? I don't even remember.
That was Seattle.
Oh, okay. They lost, right?
No, they won that one.
Okay.
I'm
a Steelers fan, and I can't even remember. But I was a Steelers fan when Bradshaw and Stallworth and Swan and Mean Joe that were playing. So how much did you pay for scalp tickets from the bathroom in a bar?
I don't know how legal that is, so we'll just say it was well over the $400 face value.
I'm sure the statute of limitations has run by now, although that's not legal advice and it shouldn't be taken as such. Okay. Well, how do you do that then? How do you go on all of these, incredible trips when you're living off primarily just your wife's salary? I'm sure it's gone up over the last 14 years, but started at $36,000, you said, or whatever. How do you manage to pay for these trips?
I guess basically our key is, I think when you have the key is to develop a high savings rate. And so for us, we were able to do that just we really controlled our living expenses. Our housing expenses, we've kept very low. We've done way better than I think average people on cars. And we each have 3 college degrees, and we've done it with a total of about $15,000 debt. So I think like a lot of people we talk to people when we learn about this stuff, and we've been sharing our message with our blog. I think a lot of people just have this huge, I call it like a noise in the background, where you have this, no matter what you're doing, you have this big mortgage payment, you have car loan payments, you're still paying student loans, and we've never had any of that. So by having this high savings rate, like I said, some years we'd splurge, some years we'd save even more, and we never really thought too much about it, and we never viewed it as sacrifice. So we didn't even think it was very hard. I think it's just a matter of if you get the big things right, everything else is kind of easy, and there's enough income. And we've definitely, like, we started at 36, but we each got to over the years we've about tripled our salary. So like we've each maxed out at around $85,000-$90,000.
Wow. Okay. So when you say you keep your car costs down compared to maybe the average family and housing costs. Give us an idea of what that means. Like, what kind of cars do you drive, and how long have you owned them, and what'd you pay for them?
Currently, we both drive newer Subarus, but
Okay.
that was we kind of had this early retirement, and this early retirement idea, and we just kind of thought we were getting close. We paid our house off completely. We thought we were kind of just going to just take a plunge. We had no plan still. This was about 3 years ago. And we found out my wife was pregnant, and everybody said, "Oh, well, everything's going to change." And we kind of bought into that hype a bit. So we went out and splurged on new cars, which was a stupid mistake. But prior to that, we've never had, we always just had older used cars, and we never really made much mistake. We never had a payment. Even with our new cars, we just paid cash for them, even though they were new cars. But prior to that, we always just drove the same car, drove it into the ground. Like I had a Chevy Malibu that I drove for about 9 years. And my wife, she drove, I don't know, the same car she had in college. We drove that for 5 or 6 years. It was a Chevy, whatever their little sedan is. I don't even know I can't remember off the top of my head. But yeah, we just always kept our expenses really low. We always buy cash. We always buy used cars up until these new cars now.
So you made a comment that you'd paid your house off. Was that much of a debate for you as to whether you should pay your house off? I assume you paid it off early.
Yeah, we paid it in about 7 years. I would say, I think kind of the reason we started sharing our story, one of the things that makes it interesting, we really had no plan. And as we get into kind of the things we've done spending money, we've made a lot of big mistakes. We definitely didn't optimize. We finished paying our house off in 2010. So the last 2008, 2009, 2010, we were just pouring money at our mortgage at a 4% rate of interest. At the same time, we were passing up, as the markets, you couldn't have made a bad investment, whether you bought real estate, whether you bought foreign stocks, domestic stocks, even bonds. I mean, anything would have been better than that. And but just by the mistakes we've made along the way have been not optimizing versus, getting crushed with debt and, filing bankruptcy or things like that. So no, we definitely didn't have a plan. And looking back, I wish we would have. We probably would still be carrying our mortgage and have double our net worth. But we made mistakes along the way.
But you make a great point, because I mean the real fundamental mistakes are not saving in the first place, or as you said, going into debt. The whole question of pay your mortgage off early versus investing, an important topic, but it pales in comparison to the kind of mistakes that folks make when they don't save and they go into debt.
Absolutely, and that's one of the reasons we started our blog. And one of the big things we talk about is, I mean, you'll hear the same things over and over, should you do a Roth versus a traditional IRA, or things like that. Or you'll hear things like, you should cut your cable, or you shouldn't go to Starbucks. And I don't disagree. Any little thing you can do helps. But the things we've done, we've gotten the big things, like I said, housing, cars, education, and we've gotten those right. And if you do that, I mean, you can make a ton of mistakes and not sacrifice even, and still, build wealth very, very quickly, versus I can see where people think it is sacrifice and where people struggle if you're focusing on these little things, and it's a lot of effort, and you get little reward if you don't get the big things right.
Yeah, that's a great point. That's a really good point. I wonder, was it ever hard? I mean, was there ever something, either you really wanted and you had to deny yourself, or, friends and family, they're buying the new cars and the new houses. Was there ever part of you that felt like it was a real difficult thing to kind of stay the course?
No, I would say not at all. And I think a lot of that is my wife and I, we both we have really strong family backgrounds, and we're just happy people. And I think there's just something said for being content. And I think a lot of that is because we came from that. And so as we started to make, like I said, we started with only $36,000 between the two of us, but quickly we were up to both making that salary, and then we're up to over $100,000. And we just realized we can spend more, and it's not going to make us any happier. So we focused on the things we really wanted. So like I said, I mean, when you're going to Super Bowls and you're going international travel, and we've hiked the Grand Canyon, we've climbed the Grand Teton, we've been all over the States. I mean, when you're doing the stuff you really want to do, no, I mean, I guess I could drive a BMW if I wanted to, but it's never been a desire. I never really cared about that. So no, I never really felt sacrifice.
Yeah. Where do you live? What state?
We live in Pennsylvania.
Okay. Oh yeah, I got right. Steelers. Okay. Just from a practical sort of month-to-month kind of consideration, do you guys use software to budget your money, or how do you keep track of the money you do spend?
No, since we've started our blog, we're trying to put hard numbers to things, and we're trying to figure things out more. And also just for our own retirement planning, one of the things that we never really thought about. I mean, I guess kind of intuitively we knew that your spending affects how much you have to save, but we never really got down to tracking that and never paid attention. So we just always kind of stayed off of my wife's whatever she made, and we tried to just spend that. But now we just use Excel spreadsheet, and I guess we're weird in the blogging world because everybody has their they use personal capital or whatever, and to get people to do the affiliates and stuff. But no, we just still use regular old Excel and write it in and add it up.
Yeah, for me, I think actually from a budgeting, I love personal capital, but from a budgeting perspective, my favorite is YNAB. But you know, you use whatever works, and if Excel works for you, or a piece of paper for that matter, I mean, in some ways, it sounds like what you really did was kind of paid yourself first. You just kept your salary separate, and that's what went to savings, and you spent your wife's income.
Oh yeah, absolutely. That's what we've always done, and like I said, when you're living with that much of a savings rate, you can splurge from time to time, but generally we didn't. I mean, we generally just stayed with that, and we were happy with that, so that's what we did.
Right. How about investing? How do you invest the money that you do have?
Currently, we do everything we can to max tax deferral, and that's just one of the things we've learned from reading early retirement blogs. And I would say, like, if you're doing that long term, it makes a big difference. But we've only just done that the last 2 years. Like, we never really realized the effect of that. We try to keep our investment costs as low as possible, so we're do-it-yourselfers. We do low-cost passive indexing, but again, that's just I think over the long term, that'll make a huge difference. But to get us to this point, honestly, we've done it with huge mistakes. We were using an advisor. We were buying loaded mutual funds, actively managed, investing in taxable accounts. We even rolled over when my wife switched jobs. We rolled over to a variable annuity in a taxable account. So for people to know that kind of do pay attention to this stuff, we basically have done everything wrong that you can do wrong.
Let me go back. Let me go back to that for a second. So you took a retirement account,
correct?
Rolled it into a taxable account.
No, we rolled it with our advisor, but and he put it into a variable annuity with really high fees, and the only real benefit that now that we kind of do read and look at this stuff and understand it, I mean, the only real benefit of a variable annuity that I can ever find is the tax deferral, and we already had that. And so It was just a way to get more fees out of us, as we now see.
That's terrible.
Yeah, like I said, we've made a lot of mistakes along the way, and we've definitely not done things optimally. And that's where I think I hope like our message can inspire people and can educate people. But I mean, so seeing things now, I mean, yeah, we could have probably we definitely could have been retired if we would have just two simple mistakes of not making the mistakes we made investing. If we would have learned from the get-go and done things correctly, and also if we would have optimized with our housing, and we could have probably increased our net worth by another $500,000 very easily. But yeah, so it's amazing what these little mistakes and these little decisions that people don't realize can do. But that being said, again, if you get the big decisions right, even despite making those massive mistakes, I mean, you can still get there.
Did you fire your financial advisor?
Yeah.
Did you ever have a conversation? This would be uncomfortable for a lot of people, but did you ever have a conversation with him or her, I don't know if it's a man or woman, but where you said, hey, you recommended that I do this with a variable annuity. That's horrible advice. Why did you do that? Did you ever have that conversation with him?
Oh, yeah, we absolutely did. We sat down. So I think, this is one of the key messages we get out with our blog and with our message is understanding your investments and understanding the financial industry. But I think basically you just don't pay attention to these things. And everything is a percentage of your assets. It's a percentage of, if you're paying commissions, a percentage of what you put in. And so some of these things, like the commissions we did see on our statements, most of the things like the expense ratios, you don't see that on your statement anywhere. All the fees, we didn't even really understand that we owned a variable annuity. When we started to sit down and break down line by line, item by item, what fees we were paying, we realized our one account had a surrender fee, and we didn't even know we owned a variable annuity. And so, yeah, we definitely confronted him about it, and we definitely brought it to his attension.
What, did he have an answer? What was his response?
His response was, normally we were buying things with commission, and so by buying a variable annuity, we didn't pay commissions. So he said that that was better for us. But then on the back end, you were paying a full percent more every single year. So if we would have not found that and kept it in there for a long time, I mean, over time, it would have absolutely crushed anything that you would have paid in commissions. So, but that was his reasoning for it. That's why he thought it was a suitable investment for us.
I guess I don't understand that you're not going to pay commissions, because he's not suggesting that he's not making money off this variable annuity. Or was it?
I'll tell you, we went round and round. It was, in retrospect, we made big mistakes, and that's what it comes down to.
But the great thing about all this, as I hear your story, is that you've mentioned a number of things that you would have done differently. Yes. Mistakes that you made, or maybe mistakes that unfortunately others kind of led you down the wrong path. And yet you're still doing great. I mean, it really kind of is a testament to, if you get the basic things right, you can make a lot of other mistakes and still be okay.
Yeah, and I think that's one of our key core messages. And another thing, a reason we really started the blog is just to kind of help educate and make people understand these things, because the financial industry, there's a lot of things that are done to deceive people. And I think just looking at things academically, like I said, my wife and I, we have a total of 6 college degrees, and just looking at the amount of wealth we've been able to build, we pay attention to finance things. I mean, this stuff is not intuitive, and there's a lot of smoke and mirrors, I think, and I think people need to understand that the financial industry, it's just an inherent conflict of interest. They make money off of your money, and you are looking to make money off of your money, and there's only one pile of money, so they have to make decisions, right. And from time to time, and oftentimes, I think they're going to choose their own interest over yours, and you have to be aware of that. And it's really hard if you are not willing to sit down and educate yourself. It's just something you have to do.
Yeah. Let me tick off a few more questions about your finances, and then I want to turn to the blog. So I got 4 things I want to ask you kind of real quick. First is, when you're both retired, what are you going to do for health care?
That is the single biggest question that we have. We're kind of like everybody else in this country, kind of waiting to see which way they kick the political football that is Obamacare. And I don't know. That's the big scary thing, because right now we're young, we're in good health, but that's the big hang up, and we're not 100% sure. That's one of the reasons one of us may continue to work at least part-time to do that, or I think we'll at least one of us will work part-time just to have some income, so if it's more than we thought, so we're not overly relying on our investments. But we don't have the answer to that right now.
Okay. Spending retirement money. Now, you mentioned, it sounds like you've got a fair amount in taxable accounts as well
Correct.
As retirement accounts. So maybe that'll answer this next question. But how do you plan on spending? Will you need to get access to your retirement accounts before you're 59 and a half? And if so, how are you going to do that?
Unfortunately, I think we got pretty bad advice from our advisor, as we talked about. But on the positive side of that, we have a lot of money in our taxable account, so that I don't think that will be too much of an issue.
Okay.
And we'll be able to let our other money continue to grow and just spend off of our taxable. We should have enough to get us a good ways. And we also, I would anticipate we'll have some small income here and there along the way. So I would anticipate we probably won't even need to do that.
Okay, good. Asset allocation. What is you're just at a high level, maybe the allocation between stocks and bonds?
We kind of look at it, we don't keep a set amount of cash. So we just look at like 80-20 fixed versus equity. So we're like 80% equities, 15% bonds. And we try to keep about 5% cash, give or take. Like, I don't ever really want to go over 2 years in expense. That's a lot of cash, a lot of drag. But I'd probably never want to go under 6 months either. So cash is a little bit fluid.
Yeah, no, that's a good allocation. Are you mainly in Vanguard, or who do you invest with?
Yeah, as much as we can get into Vanguard, that's what we're doing. We have a little bit in a retirement account that's not Vanguard, but everything else is. Okay.
And then the last question before we get to your blog is, for planning purposes, are you assuming a 4% withdrawal rate?
For deciding when we're going to be financially independent, we're using a 4% withdrawal, and then the inverse of that, so we're figuring out 25 times our expenses. But I would definitely say that as we've read and learned and educated ourselves, I think with interest rates being so low and with the markets being relatively high, I would be very nervous about starting at that. So that's another reason why we'll probably try to make some part-time income to keep our withdrawal maybe closer to like just where we could do dividends and interest to start, or maybe even not withdraw at all for the first couple of years. But if you're saving, 60, 70% of your income, you can cut way back on your work anyway and make enough to get by without saving, but without spending. So that's kind of more our strategy to start.
Right. Good. Okay. So eat the financial elephant, .com. When did you start it and why did you start it?
We just started it in May, and I think the big reason is, like I said, like if you just go on, you click on whatever comes up on your internet. I think I have MSN now, or if you go on to like any of the major publications, you just kind of see the same stuff over and over, like your Roth versus your traditional, and cutting back on Starbucks and the stuff we've already talked about. And what really has just been tremendous in kind of opening our eyes. When we started planning our early retirement, I had no idea if it was possible. When we kind of opened our eyes to how bad our financial advice was, I just went in and Googled, I put early retirement, and there was a blog called Early Retirement Extreme. And I started reading that, and it just blew me away. And then from there, I kind of went over to, I found a site called The Mad Fientist, and I'm not even sure how I came across it, but it's a really good early retirement blog, and he did a podcast. And from there, I found a couple of other really good ones. Mr. Money Mustache, who I know you've had as a guest. And there's a guy, his name's James Collins. It's JL Collins. I think it's like jlcollinsnh.com.
Right.
And he gets into investing. And so these blogs, like, they just totally opened my eyes of, like how stupid we were being and how big of things we were missing. And also, I just found them really interesting because they talked about totally different things, about focusing on your spending, focusing on, like, when you look at investing, focusing on costs and tax efficiency and stuff that I just never understood. And they helped me so much. It was kind of my way of just saying, like, I think our message is pretty interesting. Our story's pretty interesting. And it's just a way for us to pay it forward. So that's why we started the blog.
Okay, that's great. Now, did you know anything about blogging before you started it?
I still don't know that I know anything about blogging.
Yeah.
I just, we started in May of last year. And I think through like June, we had maybe like 150 people look at our page. And I think it was just basically me and my family. And I got something picked up. There's a site, Rockstar Finance. And think, I know you know Jay.
Yep.
And he's helped me immensely with just giving me some help with growing a blog. And he's featured me a few times. So that's gotten me some subscribers. And then I've reached out to you, and I've reached out to some other people to try to start spreading my message. And I'm seeing how you can grow your blog now. But yeah, I'm learning. No, I knew nothing about blogging at all. I would say 3 years ago, I didn't even know what a blog was until I found Early Retirement Extreme and then these other blogs I just mentioned.
Have you heard of FinCon, the annual conference?
Yeah, I have heard of it. I actually I looked at it last year. I think it was in New Orleans.
Right.
And with our young child, it was just something we were just getting started. But I think probably in the future, it's something I would look at doing, something we already have considered, yeah.
Yeah, it's in Charlotte, North Carolina this fall. And, one of the things I tell folks that are considering starting a blog, of course, you've already got yours going, but is how important it is to connect with other bloggers. It's huge. And if you're in the personal finance and investing space, FinCon is the place to go because you get, I think last year I want to say there were 600 bloggers there. And then the other interesting thing about the conference is folks from the financial industry are there. So, Vanguard is there, Fidelity, T. Rowe Price. So companies like that. So you get to meet, Chase was there. So you get to meet a lot of the folks in the industry as well. So I highly recommend it. If not this year, then, when you can. It certainly is with a young family. I know that's always tough. Our kids are grown and out of the house now, so I'm sort of at the other end of this. But I remember what it was like to have little ones running around the house. So is the traffic to your site growing?
Yeah, we just last week we were featured on a site called White Coat Investor, and it's more for targeted toward doctors. But a reader of mine turned me on to it, and I just contacted him, and so that was pretty big. We got a ton of new subscribers and new traffic there, and as we're trying to spread the message, we're seeing it consistently grow. Still, I mean, by blogging standards, we're tiny, but I hope as I continue to get my message out there and reach more people, and it'll continue to spread.
Well, that's great. I had not heard of White Coat Investor. I just looked it up as you mentioned it, and I will say for those listening, I will include links to all of the sites that Chris has mentioned in the show notes, so no worries about trying to write all this stuff down. Well, that's great. Do you see yourself at some point trying to make money from the blog, or perhaps writing a book about your own experiences with early retirement?
Yeah, I really, in talking to people, I think to make money off a blog, what I've kind of learned is you really have to have a ton of traffic. And And then with advertising, I don't want to do that. I've been looking at some different ways. So it's something I've kicked around. I think more my target is just right now, just to see if I continue to like it and I continue to want to write. And yeah, I think long term, I think it'll be really interesting to maybe try to write a book. And if I can build a large enough audience through my blog that people would then want to buy the book, that would be a way I would consider monetizing. But I don't know. I kind of, that really wasn't my intention getting into it, was to turn it into a career or something. But that being said, as I retire, I mean, to me, retiring is not about, I don't hate my job. I don't hate working. I actually like the idea of working. And if I can find something that I can help people, yeah, I think it would be really appealing. So if I could make money off it at some point without compromising my message, it's certainly something I would consider, and it's certainly something I'm kicking around.
Okay. Well, that's great. I wish you the best of luck with the blog. That can be a lot of fun. I'm curious, just kind of thinking through, is there any part about retiring at 40 that scares you?
I think the only thing that really scares me is I just, we've kind of gotten very comfortable. Like I said, we've never felt that we sacrifice at all. And we've never really had to experience that paycheck to paycheck and worrying about money since really the first year that I finished school and we both had an income. And so, yeah, I mean, we want to be very careful that we're not jumping in too soon and not considering all the contingencies of things that could happen. That's the biggest thing in my mind. I think a lot of people just think that we're going to get bored, and we're just not the kind of people that get bored. We always have 50 different projects on our table, and I'm sure we'll find things to bring value to others and to be rewarding. So I'm not really worried so much about that, but just really it's just the financial aspect, and particularly healthcare is the biggest fear because it's so hard to predict, and other things we can cut back on. Whereas healthcare, I mean, it's something I would not want to go without. I work in the healthcare field, and I've had some illness in my family, and it's something I take seriously, and I wouldn't. I think a lot of times having good healthcare is almost as important as having good health.
Yeah, right. Absolutely. Okay, well, I appreciate your time today. Before I let you go, one last question.
Sure.
And that is, you've mentioned a number of websites that you found very useful in your own journey, and I'm going to link to those in the show notes. Curious, are there any books that you've read that really resonated with you and helped you understand whether it's early retirement, investing, personal finance, anything like that?
Yeah, I mean, I think the saving and the early retirement, that's all kind of just more intuitive. But from investing, it's very not intuitive for me. So I actually I'm going through right now, and I'm doing resources for people for beginning investors. And I have 4 of them up as of now. And the first one is it's actually the blog that jlcollinsnh.com, and he calls it the stock series. It's a segment of his blog. And so I try to promote that because that was extremely helpful to get me started. And he actually includes a little review. He includes that as the intro to that series. So you can find that from my page or from his page.
All right.
The second one, as you know, we just talked about, I'm a Vanguard guy. So I wanted to read John Bogle. And the book I found, to me, having made the mistakes I made, the book that really spoke to me, it's called The Little Book of Investing. And I reviewed that on my site. And I don't know, other people have recommended other books, but to me, it really simplifies all the kind of tactics and the marketing that goes on in the investment industry. And it kind of lets you see through that. And it really lays out the case for index investing if that's something that you're interested in, the approach you want to take. And then the last 2 books, the thing I don't like about those 2 sources is they really kind of focus on you just have to have one fund. And the research I've done, I want a more diversified portfolio. So I reviewed Allocator, I believe is the name of it, by William Bernstein, and he's a physician that wrote the book.
Chris, I may interrupt you. You just broke up a
Sure.
little bit. I think it's our internet connection.
I'm sorry.
That's okay. What was the third book again?
The Intelligent Asset Allocator by William Bernstein.
Yeah, that's a good one.
And then the last one that I'm doing right now, that I should have up, I don't know when this will air, but it's called, it's the Rick Ferry book. I believe it's called All About Asset Allocation.
Yep. Yeah, that's a good one. I've had Rick on the show before.
Yeah, and so that's the 4. And I think if you have those, and there's a ton of good books out there, but those are the 4 that, to me, if you read those 4, or those 3 books in that one blog, there's a lot of overlap between even those books and blog. And a lot of stuff starts to get repetitive, but I mean, there's a lot of other good sources, I'm sure, but those are the 4 that I recommend.
Right. That's great. Well, those are excellent resources, and I appreciate you sharing those with us.
Absolutely.
Appreciate your time on the show. I wish you the best of luck with your early retirement and your blog.
Thank you. I'm really glad that you had me on, and hopefully I'll be able to reach some new readers. And I appreciate you helping me get my message out.
You bet. Thanks so much. Well, I really appreciate Chris taking the time to be on the show today. Hopefully you got a lot out of it. I know I did. Each time I hear these early retirement stories, I learn something new, a different perspective, a different way to think about it. It's interesting that not all of these, they tend to all kind of arrive at the same place, retiring in their 30s or 40s, which just blows my mind. But they kind of did it different ways. They had very different jobs. They made different mistakes. But they all got the basics right. That is, saving a substantial percentage of their income. And that's certainly the case with Chris and his wife, and I appreciate the time he took to share that story with us. You can find all of the books and websites that he mentioned in today's interview in the show notes for this episode. It is episode 171. So what you'll do, go to doorroller.net. You'll see a link to for the podcast there in the navigation, and that will bring up a widget that lists actually all of the podcasts that I've published, and it's very easy to scroll through. Even if you're listening to this, it was published in April of 2015, but if you're listening to this 2 or 3 years later, who knows what episode we'll be on at that point, but it's easy to scroll through all of the episodes, find episode 171, Eat the Financial Elephant, and that from there you'll be able to, of course, re-listen to the podcast if you want to, but also there'll be a link to the show notes for this episode, and you can click on that and you'll see all of the links to the various resources that Chris mentioned in today's interview. Well, there you go. If you have any questions at all, email me, dr@doorroller.net. Obviously, go out and check Chris's website, eatthefinancialelephant.com. And until next time, remember, the best thing money can buy is financial freedom.